Hello, Hockey World. Yep, here we are. We just had a little fun conversation before this. Russ, what's going on?
Well, I guess we'll talk about the NLDS because
That's good. Good thing to talk
there's a
about.
lot of consternation coming out of here in Philly. And look, I'm a Met fan. I don't hide it.
Yeah.
But I've seen enough Phillies games. My dad is a turncoat and became a Phillies fan a few years ago, and that's fine. And we we talk.
That makes for good familial relations.
It does. I mean, we talk about it. It's fine. We have no problem with it. But what I find interesting is, there's only so much fault you could find in the players in the sense, like I was listening to Philly sports radio, and I guess that it's easy to blame players at times, right? But not everybody's ever hot at all times in baseball. It never happens. Usually you get 2 or 3 guys that are really hot. 1 or 2 may contribute in every other game or something, and you get great pitching and bullpen. And a lot of times that's it. It's very rare when your whole lineup's hitting, right?
Right.
And so I had said something, and I'm not blaming Rob Thompson because I think he's a good manager, but my feeling is when you're in these situations, and I told Mike, just play your best defense. If your hitters are your hitters, it's fine. If you're going to all of a sudden try and get more offense and have less defense in there, it's going to hurt you in tight games. And it almost bit them. I mean, it bit the Phillies the first time when they put what's his name at third base instead of Bohm, and then he made Sosa. Thank you. And so yesterday they had him in at second. And he just barely got a play at the plate. He did get it, but he fumbled it, and he was playing second instead of Bryson Stott, who made a great play the game before, saved the run. I just say you got to play these guys like the Mets. They played Taylor in center field. He made that great play, great throw, and that got Bohm out at second. So they sacrificed a little offense for that. But they needed to make that play.
Yeah,
you can't get extra outs in these playoff games, and that's my big feeling here. You could always cite lack of hitting. Mike will cite it in a minute, but that's not everything that costs you. It's more than that.
Well, the Yankees' best defensive outfield might be playing Trent Grisham in center field because he's a platinum glove outfielder. But the problem is then they have nobody to play left because Judge has never played left, and Soto.
No, and that's a fair point.
Right. So you play Verdugo in left, and he's a decent outfielder in left, and he's played there all year. So, yeah, I mean, in general, I agree. But, these games are turned by a big hit one way or the other.
Right. For sure.
And, right now,
a big error. Sometimes it's a big error.
Or a big error, sure. The Yankees game 2, they faced a lefty. I think it's Raggins, his name is, from the Royals, pitched really well and shut down their offense. And it's like you're not going to win many playoff games if you only score 2 runs. So I think there's got to be a balance. You have to have the best defensive lineup you can have out there, but the best defensive lineup that can also hit.
Yeah, right. But like the Mets got 7 runs. They're not scoring 7 every game, and neither are the Phillies. Most of the time in these games, you are scoring just 3 or 4 runs.
Now, I wanted to bring this up, Russ, not because I'm egging you on or anything like that, but I did hear about 2 minutes of Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show. Right. And it was basically like, I loved Robert Saleh. I didn't want him fired. This was an ownership decision. What a load of shit.
Yeah,
I mean, my God.
He just doesn't want anything to fall on his shoulders, but like you saw him push away in the game when Saleh went to hug him. It was clear there was tension. Then there was a report that Saleh wanted to take some responsibilities away from Nathaniel Hackett, their offensive coordinator. Well, that's Rodgers' guy. He didn't want that. So don't tell me that didn't play into it, because of course it did. But I did write an article on Sportsology, and the reason I say that is I was in the middle of nowhere last year in Michigan, and I ran into a coach who coached Robert Saleh. And this guy went to the Jets game, met up with Robert, saw the Jets get killed. And his feeling was last year at this time, which was, during the winter, that he should be fired. He's not a good head coach. And this is from a head coach.
Yeah.
From a different level. And I agreed. Like, I didn't think it should go this long anyhow. But Aaron Rodgers is so worried about his image. Yeah. But he's in New York now. Like, this stuff doesn't fly. So it's like, whatever.
Don't worry, Russ. The salve to the wound is coming up because the first game that they play is against the Buffalo Bills at home, where they haven't won in, I think, an eon. So
ESPN killed Josh Allen for his performance last game, and it's like I think he was concussed, but that's just me.
It's very possible.
Yep.
I watched a lot of that game too. All right, here we go. Got lots to get to. Hold on. Let me just see something. What's the date today?
Wednesday.
Yes, Siri.
9th? Wednesday, October 9th?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, Hockey World. It is Wednesday, October 9th, 2024.
I'm Michael Agello, and I am very happy that I'm a member of the Goaltenders Union today because a lot of my friends got paid.
Russ Cohen from sportsology.com, NHLDraftBuzz.com.
There you go. Adam Eklund and Mike has no idea how good Anthony Solars is. You're watching Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in, well, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to fill you in the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we have a lot of goalies signed today. And we always talk about goalie signings and how people just don't like to do it.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, and maybe that's changing. And since our show, because on Monday we talked about the Jeremy Swayman contract, we've had 3 notable contract situations that have been resolved or not resolved. The first one is the reported Igor Shesterkin offer. Kevin Weeks reported an 8-year deal at $11 million per. So 8 years, 88 that Shesterkin rejected. Now, Russ, I haven't heard anything more about whether he's willing to continue talking during the season, but I know that in talking to you and hearing some other stuff around that he wants at least 12.
That's what I think. I felt that all along. I knew when that number 11 came out, there was no way he's taking it. I get why Chris Drury asked him, but he wasn't taking it. So I think it's 12. And look, there was that talk like, hey, Swayman's going to set the goalie market. And then people were like, see, he didn't set it. It was only 8.25. No, he did set it. What he did set was that mid-range goalie market. Right. Because we'll talk about one in a minute, but Shesterkin's going to set the elite goalie price in the market, and Decord, which we'll talk about, send the 1B price in the market. These are the prices now. It's going to be like buying tires. This is, or like I said, a quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
Certain guys at certain levels get the pay, and I think this is the structure now that the cap's going up.
Well, okay, so Swayman signs, I think it was Monday, maybe Sunday, one of those days, 8 years at $8.25 million. That's the same cap hit as Sorokin with the Islanders. Now, this morning it comes out, and I was a little surprised at this because I thought that maybe Linus Ullmark would play out into the season a little bit to see if he could maybe improve his leverage. But I also think, and this is my own personal point of view, the Ottawa Senators defensively are abysmal. And until they prove that they're not, I'm going to believe that they are. I mean, I think Travis Green is a good coach, and maybe they can improve. But if I'm Linus Ullmark, I'm trying to get as many years and for as much money right now, because if he plays 20 games with Ottawa and his goals against is 3.6 and his save percentage is in the 880s, it's going to cost him millions of dollars. So he gets a 4-year deal at 8.25, and that's pretty good business for Linus Ullmark, Russ.
I think it's good for Ottawa too. They don't have any goaltending options.
Yeah.
Matt Sogard was not going to be a 1. They don't have a 1 strolling through town.
Anton Forsberg?
Yeah. They don't have a 1 strolling through downtown Ottawa that's going to, do anything. So I think it's the smart move. He may not be at the top of the ones. I get it. He might be middle of the league. He might be 15th. But at least they have a guy they know they can put in net who's not going to be hurt like Matt Murray, and they know that he'll be there. And there's something to be said about that.
There's another element to this because basically, on the Swayman deal, he signed the day before players got paid, which is interesting, because every day he wasn't getting paid. I heard someone talking about this, that he was losing $42,000. Okay. So essentially, yeah. So essentially, if he stays out 6 days, that 8.25 is just 8. Doesn't matter. So he's got to
Well,
sign
for 1 year, not for the whole
Yeah,
contract.
but as he's losing $250,000, which is still, even though he's making $8 million a year, still $250,000. So players, won't just give that away.
I mean, okay, and I do realize, Russ has got to throw his Matt Murray shade. That's like a daily
It's not shade; it's just a fact.
No, but what I'm saying here, since 2017, I think that was the year that Ottawa made the conference finals and lost in Game 7 to Pittsburgh, and they had a really good number one goaltender in Craig Anderson at that point, an aging but a good goaltender. Since that point, they've had Matt Murray, they've had Cam Talbot, they've had Anton Forsberg as a sort of pseudo number one. They've had Jonas Korpisalo, who they signed to a 5-year free agent deal and dumped after 1 year, and now Linus Ullmark.
And they had Gustafson, and they got rid of him.
Right.
Yes, they had Phil Gustafson as a
and
prospect.
He could have been the guy.
Right. So, and they traded him for Talbot. Now, so what this tells you is this is not a goaltender problem in the sense that some of these goalies are actually good goalies. This is an Ottawa Senators problem. They hang goalies out to dry. Now, if Travis Green plays a better defensive system and covers up for them a little bit, then I think these goaltenders and I think Ullmark can succeed. But he's not going to put up the stats that he put in Boston. That's a team that knows how to play defense. That's why he signed this deal. He got this deal before he got exposed. In Buffalo, in front of an average defense, he was an average goaltender.
It's not fair to call, like we said, like he was one of the best goalie coaches in the world in Boston. And the reality is, he's not the goalie he was in Buffalo. But at the same time, I don't disagree with you, Mike, that he gets his contract early because, before he's giving up like 3 or 4 goals a game. I do agree with that.
Yep.
But I also think that there is a definite run on right now of teams that don't have number one goalies and goalies trying to become number one goalies by signing. I think that's happening too. For example, Swayman doesn't sign there, which he of course he was going to, but if he doesn't sign there, then where would he go? Like, where would he get traded to? Like, what other teams don't have number one goalies?
Detroit.
There are teams. Well, they've got 2 pretty good goalies. So that's
it though. They're just
our future number one goaltender is 2 years away. They have a hodgepodge of veterans that are not very good. Husso, Cam Talbot, Alex Lyon. It's not. It's
to me. I mean, well, all 3 of those are NHL goalies.
people were saying Swayman for Gibson. Like Swayman for Gibson would make sense for both teams if that were to happen. I don't think it would ever happen, but at the time, I understood where that came from.
Yeah. I can think of 5 teams off the top of my head that don't have a number one goaltender that would be much better teams if they had a number one goaltender. I mean, the LA Kings, who are here in Buffalo to play the Sabres, if they had Jeremy Swayman, they'd not be the favorite in the West, but they'd be a lot. Their chances would be a lot better. Detroit doesn't have a number one. Toronto really doesn't have a number one. I mean, so I mean, there are a lot of teams that
a lot of teams don't have number one, but the reality is, if you're on a team that's making you the number one right now, that's something.
Making somebody a number one doesn't make him a number one. You're naming somebody a number one, but that doesn't mean they're a number one.
Ullmark knows he's the best goalie in Ottawa by a lot.
Sure,
so but going in there and he's like, this can be my team. And listen, I mean, last night watching the Boston Panthers game, that Boston defense was horrendous.
Yeah,
absolutely horrendous.
Just because I'm the most handsome man in Cheektowaga, New York, doesn't mean I'm the most handsome man.
Yeah, that Boston defense isn't what it was, but they'll figure it out to a point where it's decent.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've got Charlie McAvoy. He was amazing on one of the top 3 defensemen.
Lohrei is a good young defenseman.
Yeah, Lohrai's pretty good. They can make it work. It's not as good as it used to be. No way.
And honestly, of what I saw of it last night, Florida's going to have some issues. I mean, you piece together. You lost Montour, you lost Ekman-Larsson, you've replaced them with Nate Schmidt and Boquist. I mean, it's going to take a while for them to really sort of hone themselves into, and then maybe it's not something they can do. I mean, but so let's just finish off the goaltending thing here because the other contract was Joey Decord, and I like Joey Decord, and somebody else said Joey Decord was in Ottawa too, and that's
a finance issue. Like he wasn't going to be the one at that time, so they weren't going to pay him to be a backup there.
So you've got Joey Decord in Seattle, and now they sign him at 5 years for $5 million. So you've got him, you've got Grubauer, who is still on that contract that they signed him, and that's not a good deal because Grubauer is not.
No, that turned out to be worse than I thought. I thought it was going to be okay.
Yeah, so I mean, so there's a question. There's a situation where he's a number one, but he's a number one by default. And is he a good number one? I don't want to slam him because I think he's a good goalie, but I don't think he's a number one. I don't think
he's in like the bottom, 5 or 6 at the moment, but he has potential.
Yeah. So now next year, unless they buy him out, the Seattle Kraken are paying their goaltending $11.9 million.
Yep.
That's not good. Not good at all.
But the reality is expansion teams live on goaltending.
Right, but this is an expansion team that is spending $11.9 million and does not have good goaltending. It's average goaltending.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And they may buy out Grubauer. That might be what they do. But I'm just saying it's not great. Whereas a team like Minnesota, they have a future Hall of Famer in Fleury. They have Gustafsson, who had a bad year last year, but I think he's a good goaltender. And they have Wallstedt as the heir apparent. So they're in good shape. They're in good shape. Yeah,
they're in much better shape for sure.
But I'll finish this off. So UC Saros out day to day. Doesn't sound like it's anything serious. Russ, you said Demko.
Demko's on the IR.
Yeah, so they're going to go with Lankinen and Svilovs at the beginning of the season.
Nobody wants to risk their goalie at the beginning of the season. That's what we're seeing. If there's a slight little thing, nobody's risking it.
Right, and that's what's behind what's going on with Toronto, because Joseph Woll was slated to be the starter tonight. I guess he woke up with like a tightness in his back, and they're like, you know what, we'll start Stolarz against Montreal, and Woll might start tomorrow against New Jersey. But
I just think it's ironic that we talk about his injuries, and in his first start as a number one,
right,
he's not starting.
It just sends Leaf fans into apoplexy, because the whole thing with Joseph Woll was not ability, it's availability. And if he's not available, Anthony Stolarz is not a number one goaltender. I don't think he's a particularly good number two, but he had great. But let me just finish, Jack. He's never played more than 28 games in a year. He had great stats last year in front of a Stanley Cup winner. So
that Florida team gives up opportunities. Okay, they are offense first team. Remember that they have
firepower though.
They're not a city that
last year. They were pretty good defensively last year.
No, they weren't. What they were? What
they were? They were pretty.
They were because Ekman Larson gave them more than they expected. But
and Montour's hurt.
We know where he is now too.
Yeah. So I mean,
they gave up 200 goals against last year, which in the league was second behind Winnipeg.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
No, it's pretty good. No question about it. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that they had two good goalies too. Like Bobrovsky makes a lot of saves and Stolarz makes a lot of saves. I bet if you looked up the shots that Florida had against them, they wouldn't be second least. I mean, they give up a lot of opportunities. Yeah. But anyway, let's move on to predicting, because we have to predict. That's their law. Yeah. And here we go. So we're going to do the predictions, and we're going to start with the Central Division today, because I've already put my Central Division picks up, but I'm sure no one's read them, so that's fine. So let's just continue on with that. And I'm going to start from the bottom. And you guys want to do what you did yesterday, or just want to do the
you do your 8 through 1.
We'll follow.
All
right. Number 8 for me is Chicago. Clear cut, Chicago is the worst team in the Central Division. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, they're adding pieces. They have young players, but they're still building.
I mean, Teravainen's good. He's going to help Bedard a little bit. And then they got that guy from that was the kind of a real big disappointment on the Leafs last year.
Tyler Bertuzzi. Well,
until the very end of the year.
First half of the year, he was disappointing. Second half of the year, he was pretty good.
I always forget who's in the Central. I never. If I asked me to recite them, I couldn't tell you all.
Yeah, I have to look it up too. I honestly do. So that's where I have 8th place. 7th place, I have the Utah, and I'm really surprised at all the people picking Utah to make the playoffs.
Yeah, honestly, I don't see it.
I just don't see it. I think that but it's amazing. And I don't try to look around the predictions until I make mine. But after I made mine, I looked around and saw what they were doing, and people people all think Utah is 4th or 5th. It's Arizona with a couple better defensemen. I mean, it's really not, and watching them last night, they just, they're okay. I mean, they have a couple good, like Logan Cooley's great, and all that stuff, but they don't have a lot up front, and they don't have a lot on the back end either.
Clayton Keller is pretty good. Lawson Krause is pretty good. They've added a couple defense. Sure. Their goaltending is not good. There's another team that could use a number one goaltender.
They need a goalie.
Yeah, right. I don't think you can get away with bad goaltending in this division, honestly.
Right. If they had traded for Askarov, not to say that Askarov is ready this year, but if they had traded for Askarov, then I'd say within the next 2 years they would have been a playoff team. But having Karl Vejmelka and Connor Ingram just won't cut it.
So that's my bottom two. Now moving up to the next one. In sixth, I have the Minnesota Wild, who I think are, they're the weird team. They're such a hard team to predict because they have this talent. They work really hard. They've got the goaltending, like you said, Mike, and they're hard to play against. But they seem to just lose to teams they shouldn't lose to. They beat teams they shouldn't beat, but they lose to teams they shouldn't lose to too often. It's wildly inconsistent. So I've got the Wild at 6.
Yeah, I think they could surprise us, but right now I'm okay with that spot.
I have them one slot higher.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think they could even be 2 slots higher depending on what happens with other teams. But I'm not willing to pick it. But think
they are. I mean, they are the hardest team to pick in this division, I think, by far, and they're really just hard. But I'm putting them at 6.
I mean, there's a chance. I mean, if Boldy gives them more, we love Faber. They've got great goaltending. Like even if Fleury got hurt, they had Wallstead who could come up. Like they're in good shape in a lot of things, but it's a tough division.
But then they also have to deal with Kirill Kaprizov. Keeps on telling people he wants to play for Chicago next year.
Yeah, we know that, but he's still going to have a great year.
He's going to have a great year, no question about it.
I have St. Louis 6.
Yep, I have St. Louis 5th, and I think that people are underestimating the Blues right now.
They absolutely are.
I think the Blues are a much better team than people are giving credit for.
There's a lot of talent there, but the problem with the Blues is their defense is hideous. Their defense with Krug is out. Parayko has not been good since they won the Cup in 2019. He's been inconsistent. Justin Falk is overpaid. I like their forwards, and they have 2 good goaltenders in Binnington and Hofer. I don't think Binnington is as good as Russ thinks he is, but I think he's good.
Okay, like what else? If Binnington were on Toronto, you'd be like they're set in goal.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay.
You have to define what you say is not that good.
You think he's one of like the top 6 or 7 goaltenders in the league?
No, I think he's like number 10 or 12. But that's enough to make the playoffs.
That's fine. But no, I'm just saying I don't think he's somebody who can steal a playoff spot for them. I think he's good.
No, he can. He's already done it.
Okay,
he did it in the Cup. He did it 2 years after the Cup. What else does he have to do?
There's a certain kind of goalie that Binnington is, and what he is he's a much better goalie when the team is much better. He's like he is a goalie when the games are competitive, when you have, and when it gets tight like that, he's a much better goalie in that situation. But he's not going to be a better goalie,
2 years ago, his GSAA was 16.6.
Right,
it's really good.
It's really, really good. Yes,
his lifetime save percentage is .908. So he has fluctuated.
I'm not saying he's not a good goaltender. I'm just not saying he's a great goaltender. But anyway,
I think you slag him a little too much. I don't have them 6th. This is where I run into trouble with this division because I think they could have 2 teams make the wild card. I think that's
I have the Central with 5 and the Pacific with 3.
That's what I have.
The Pacific got weaker, so I think we could talk about where the Blues and the Preds end up, but I think they're both going to be wild cards.
I think the Blues are the second wild card. That's what I have them as now.
I have them as the first and the Preds as the second.
I have the Wild as the second wild card.
Okay.
Which could happen.
Yeah, that could definitely happen. Next up, I have Winnipeg at number 4. Now, I just think that the crazy thing about Winnipeg is that, again, here's another team that's like way better than they're getting credit for right now. It's like it's amazing how much dirt that people are dishing out on this division.
I feel bad too. I think Winnipeg gets flogged and they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Hellebuck's one of the top goalies, one of the 3 best goalies in this league.
Yeah.
And I have them 3rd. I think Hellebuck will have another Vezina year. I do. And I just think, yes, he's not going to win a Vezina every year.
Right.
But I do think, every couple of years now. He hasn't won them 2 in a row, but I think he might be the kind of goalie that can. And if he does, then I think they'll be in third, and that's why I pick them for third.
I think what the problem here with Winnipeg, and it's nothing. It's not of their own volition, but they're suffering from what I'll call Rutger McGroarty disease, and that's the sense that nobody wants to play there. Unless it's the same thing with Buffalo right now, the same thing with Montreal. I mean, if they're successful, people want to play there. But if they're not successful, there's a long stretch where they're not having success. People don't want to play there. Right. Nikolai Ehlers will leave either by trade or free agency after.
I'm not even sure they care anymore.
I don't pay. Maybe they don't, but I'm just saying. Maybe they could have gotten value for him in the summer, Russ. But the problem is. Right, they tried, but the problem is that probably nobody would give him what they thought was and McGroarty, they had to trade him for Braden Yeager, and that in the end may be a good trade for them because Yeager's a Western Canadian kid and McGroarty simply didn't want to play.
But this team that was plus 60. Now they're not going to get 110 points, but and maybe they get 105.
Yeah,
but they were plus 60 last year. Did they get that much worse? I don't think so.
No, they're a good. They're a good team. I didn't pick the. I picked the top 3, and my top 3 in the division, in no particular order, were Dallas, Colorado, and Winnipeg, with Nashville and Minnesota as the 2 wild cards.
Yeah, I have Dallas. I think Dallas will win the division because I think that's what they do in the regular season. Mm-hmm. I think the Avs will be second or third, and Winnipeg will be second or third. I don't think the Avs care where they come in the division. They know how good they are, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
No, that's possible though. So my third is Nashville,
mm-hmm.
And I do think that the one thing the Predators fans love, and that's what I like about this whole thing, is they love a star. Like they have there's a big thing about Nashville and stars. They really. Yep. They loved Korea when he was there. They loved Forsberg when he was there for a brief period of time. I mean, they absolutely, and they're going to love Stamkos. So the reality is, this is going to be an exciting year for the Preds, and they're going to do a lot. I think Saros is hurt right now. I know, but
it's nothing serious. It's day to day.
Right. Second, I have Dallas. I do like the Stars a lot. Obviously, I think they're one of those teams that just keeps very consistent and have great goaltending, and they get a little bit better. They add some young players that are going to help this year.
Yeah, Dallas is my pick to go to the Cup final from the West.
Yep. Yeah.
Mine's the Avalanche.
Okay. Yeah. So Colorado, I have first. I have Colorado first, because I do think that people are underestimating them a little bit right now too. Like I think that
I don't know how you can, but I guess they can.
Yeah. I mean, they should be. There are people that if you watch like NHL Network, which I've watched far too much of lately. But if you watch the NHL Network, you'll see that there's people on there predicting that they might not make the playoffs, which is insane.
Oh my God!
It's just because they're one injury away from not being able to make the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, they have 3 of the top 10 best players in the league on their team, and that's like to me that you can't possibly not make the playoffs with 3 of the top 10 players in the league on your team. So that's what's going on there. Yeah.
I would like to make a proclamation.
Okay.
The Pacific Division is the worst division in hockey.
By far.
By far. Honestly, if there was a possibility of having 2 teams in the playoffs,
that's what it would be.
This division would qualify.
Yep. I agree with
that. I cannot not pick the Edmonton Oilers for the playoffs, to miss the playoffs, because this division sucks so bad.
I mean, they're obviously good, but yes.
But you know what I'm saying? I would just out of spite pick them to miss the playoffs, but I can't because this division blows.
I mean, there's really no way they don't win the division, really.
I think the only team that could challenge them for that is Vancouver, and if Demp goes out for a long period of time, then that's going to hurt them. Yeah.
Well, let's get through these teams for a second, because I think there's a little bit more talent here than you guys are letting on to.
I'm not saying there's not talent there. I'm just saying there's not teams.
Teams aren't great.
There are a couple teams that could actually make a step forward, and that that we don't really know about yet. Like I'm going to say Ace is the San Jose Sharks. I think that's pretty obvious.
Easy.
That's easy.
Yep.
7 is Calgary.
No, 7. I'm going with the Kraken.
No way.
I am, because I really don't. I've watched them play a lot.
They play. I mean,
Here it is. Eck hates salmon, and so he's holding it against them.
I love Seattle. I love the people of Seattle.
Do you love salmon? You didn't answer the question.
I don't like salmon.
See, that's it. That's your bias.
He hates people who throw fish.
Yeah, that's his bias. I knew it.
And he hates coffee too. There you go.
Well, so do I.
All right. So sixth, I have the
Calgary.
No, I have the Kings, and I think that people are way too high on the Kings. I think that they just don't have a lot going on. I mean,
okay, I'll say this because the Kings are here, and they're open. You know, the Sabres are opening the home opener against the Kings tomorrow, and I bumped into our friend Scott Burnside, Russ, at the arena this morning, and he's doing some coverage for the Kings. I don't know if it's for NHL.com or wherever, ESPN, whoever, but we were talking about the Kings, and I said, the Doughty injury is going to be a killer for them. I mean, he's probably going to be out at least the first half of the year with a fracture. It was a fracture easily. But the thing that's going to kill them, and where have you heard this before? Their goaltending is terrible. Their number one goaltender is Darcy Kemper. And Darcy Kemper could not beat out Charlie Lindgren in Washington. So
no, they're the third worst team in that division.
Yeah. No question about it.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
But I think they're good enough because they're good enough to beat out Calgary. Calgary is tanking. They traded Mangiapane. They were
going to tank anyhow.
I know, but Russ, I mean, they're basically directing the ship into the iceberg. Not only did they trade Zadorov and Tanev and Lindholm, now then they traded Markstrom, they traded Mangiapane.
Yep.
There's not much left there.
Yeah, there's 5 really solid guys at the top of the draft, and they'll get one of them. That's what they're.
I think they're going to finish like 6th or 7th in this division.
Yeah, I have them. Let's see. It's going up still. I have the Kings at 6th. I have the Flames at 5th. Yep, and then I go to Vegas at 4th. I'm going to put Seattle in 4th. Yeah, I'm going to put Seattle 4th. Could they do better than that? Sure. But I'm a little shaky with Seattle. I think they'll be better. Right. But I don't know if they're going to be good enough. So,
yeah, I have. Let's see here. I have San Jose 8. I have Calgary 7. I have LA 6, Seattle 5, Anaheim 4, and the 3 teams that make the playoffs are Edmonton, in no particular order, Edmonton, Vegas, Vancouver.
Yeah, I think that Vegas could miss out, and I have Anaheim at 3. And I actually like a lot of what I've seen of the Ducks, what they're doing and how they're putting it together. I feel like they're about ready to jump into like the fray, to be like a really serious team in the West.
I mean, they have a lot of young talent, but first of all, I mean, if they make the playoffs, Lucas Dostal is going to be a candidate for the Vezina, and I don't know whether that's the case. I mean, because Gibson's out probably the first month of the season recovering from an appendectomy. They have some good young defensemen, but is Zellweger, all the young defensemen that they have, are they all going to come together at the same time? Do they have enough offense? I mean,
they play very fast. Like the one thing I like about them is that they play very fast. I've noticed this, in the preseason, and I think that tends to go with young players, right? In general, because young players are used to playing fast.
I just think it's a lot to ask of that team to put all these young kids to put it all together at one time. I think they're gonna improve. I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs.
Yeah. No, I can see that. I mean, it is a lot. I mean, they might not. I mean, I'm around the cusp, 3 or 4, but I am at 3. And then the Oilers at 1 and Canucks at 2. Like we all.
I refuse
to. Yeah, I got Oilers 1, Canucks 2, Vegas 3.
Yeah, I refuse to pick a winner in this division simply because I don't want to pick Edmonton.
Right. So for the playoffs for me, I have the Oilers, Canucks, and Ducks, and I have the.
So you're picking Vegas to miss the playoffs.
Yes, I am.
You're picking the Ducks over Vegas.
I'll tell you why the Vegas is going to miss the playoffs.
This is.
They have losing Marcia Show is not is their most.
Put them up your nose. That would make more sense.
I'm a walrus.
Marcia Show is their most consistent player, and they have never done well when Chandler Stevens is not in their lineup. It's always he is much better than people think, and he can do a lot. Chandler Stevens is going to be a factor. So they're missing those two guys right off the bat, missing Logan Thompson as a backup, which they need because Aiden Hill is not the end of the world. Like he's not like the greatest goalie on the planet. I think that there's enough things with Vegas that
come on. Ilya Samsonov has arrived.
There's so many question marks on this team, and they're acting. This is the first time in all the Vegas years that we've seen that they haven't improved in the offseason. Like they tend to.
They still have enough. You have Jack Eichel, who's still a star in the league. You have enough goaltending, even without Robin Leonard. That whole situation, by the way, for them just to kind of say, yeah, you don't have to pay him this year, and it won't be on the cap.
That's really ridiculous.
That's really weird.
I agree with you.
Yeah, there wasn't really a full explanation.
There was no explanation.
Yeah, so I mean, we know the issues that Leonard has had in the past.
Sure.
But
why does that not affect the cap?
Right, exactly. I don't know. I mean, I believe this is the final year of his contract, so it drops off after this year. But really, there should be some ramifications. I mean, if it's an injury, if it's something behavioral.
Yeah, like
I don't know what exactly it is, but there should have been a further explanation of why there's a waiver here.
That's for sure. I agree. But it's hard to. I don't know. It's hard when to me, if there's not an explanation, it probably is something more mental.
Okay, but all that aside, Eck, in the cold, cruel cap world, the cap is the cap.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I agree. The cap has been circumvented by this situation, and the NHL used to care a lot more about cap circumvention.
Yeah, they're weakening on that.
They are definitely, which is interesting because they're just doing so well. They don't seem to care about it.
Well, the new
this isn't fair, but this Mark has a good point. He's saying different rules for different teams. Like, it could appear that way.
Yes, and everybody complains about Mark Stone. Well, he comes back the first game. I mean, that's old hat. I mean, we've seen that with Patrick Kane. We've seen that with Peter Forsberg back in the day. That happens. But $5 million coming off the cap for an unknown reason. I mean, it smells a little fishy, and we're not talking about Seattle here.
Well, a player can walk away from a contract.
Yeah, that's a contract termination. There's not a termination here. I mean, Mike Richards' contract was terminated because of particular reasons. We had Evander Kane's contract terminated. We had Berglund's contract with Buffalo terminated. There were reasons. There was explanations for why those happened.
However, those were all NHL decisions.
No, those were player decisions. Like Berglund went back to Sweden. He didn't want to play in Buffalo, and he says, "I'm going back to Sweden."
But like Richards and
Richards was he violated the contract because of the
league decision.
Right.
And then some of the other ones.
We still haven't heard about the Ryan Johansson situation.
No, but okay, we'll get to that in a minute. But on this one, like, he didn't show up for the physical.
Right.
In the past, that was like an S storm, and Mike remembers that from Toronto.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, no, the Jared Cowan situation was he was traded. They acquired him.
Right.
At the deadline, they basically told him, "You're not going to play for us. We did the medical evaluation. You're healthy. You're not going to play for us, and we're going to buy you out over the summer." And then he had surgery. Unapproved by the team, and the Leafs basically said, well, we didn't approve that, and you're under a contract with us, so you can't do that. And the NHL backed the Leafs, and they were right.
So here's the thing. So the league said, yes, it's required by the I don't want to say Constitution, by the cap, by the CBA, that players who are on LTIR have to take that physical.
Correct.
They gave him special dispensation. And all they said was he can't play in Las Vegas this year.
Right.
And it's an unprecedented, highly unique case.
Right.
How much do you want to bet there are going to be more unprecedented, highly unique cases in the future?
Yep. Joffrey Lupul goes to Leafs training camp. Oh, I'm so anxious to play with Joffrey this year. And then Lou Lamoriello comes out and says he didn't pass his physical. He's gone.
Yeah.
He's on Robidoux Island.
This is different though.
But it's becoming more common. I'm
not saying it's not becoming more common, but I'm saying that this feels like Vegas did something wrong here too.
No,
I don't get that feeling.
I think what this is that the reason for this sort of waiver is known by the league, is known by the PA. It probably has something to do with like the players assistance program, but they're not going to say that because that would expose it. And they're like, okay, this is a one-time exemption because there's something going on here that we don't really want to publicize, but everybody knows, but nobody knows, that type of thing.
So here's the thing. So is he getting paid or not?
I don't think so.
I think he's getting paid.
I don't think he is.
I think he's getting paid by Vegas. He's getting paid to go away, basically. I'll bet you that's what it is.
That's a buyout, and that's not what's happening.
Right, but they can't afford a buyout.
Right, so he's not getting paid to go away. I think this is.
Yeah, it says he'll be paid his salary, but it doesn't count against the cap.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. If you placed him on waivers and sent him down to the American Hockey League, $1 million.
Elliot Friedman reported that.
Yeah, $1.125 million, I think it is, would count against the cap. So in this, nothing counts.
Wow.
Zero.
I'm telling you, more of this is going to happen in the future. This may be a highly unique whatever case, but there's going to be other highly unique cases, and maybe Johansson is the next one of those.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you guys think about, like, Steve in the chat room is saying, forget the salary cap, just pay luxury taxes?
No, luxury tax doesn't work. We've seen it in baseball. It's a failure.
Because okay, what that would do, and of course, being somebody who covers the richest franchise in the league, and Russ, is the team that he watches all the time is the second. The Leafs would have no problem paying $150 million payroll. If it got them a Stanley Cup, they would do it. Now, that doesn't mean it would actually happen because they spent that kind of money back in the 90s and it didn't get them anywhere, or in the early 2000s, and the Rangers paid $9 million for Bobby Holik. Yep. So spending money in and of itself does not get you a Stanley Cup or even or a baseball or a World Series. Look at the Yankees and the Dodgers.
Absolutely.
But it helps. It improves your odds.
Yeah, definitely improves your odds.
But no, I don't like the luxury tax because what ends up happening is the bottom feeders make a lot off the guys who are paying over on the tax, and they don't care. They don't put it back into the team. They just pocket it as profit.
As I said before, I am for a flexible hybrid system that involves all. One of the things that's a bug up my rear end is the no state tax teams having advantages, and the teams that make the most money in this league and funnel money to the other teams are the teams that are penalized because they're in high tax bracket places like Toronto, like New York, like Los Angeles, like Montreal. I mean, those are the teams, not LA, but those are the teams that drive the engine of this league. And there should be some benefit to them. If not, I'm not saying they should get it above and beyond, but I am saying that they shouldn't be penalized because they're in areas where, taxes are up the wazoo. So I'm sorry.
You can't do that. Like, it's only like 4 teams. You can't do a whole.
The other thing about it is more than taxes. It's standard of living in places too. Like it's way different. That's. I mean, you don't think a standard of living matters to a millionaire, but it does.
There is. Remember, players get taxed in every city they play in. Right, it's just they're going to play more in that no tax place.
Like the Philly wage tax, which has been going on for years, NHL players have to pay the Philly wage tax when they play in Philly, which is like a crazy thing. That's anybody who works in Philly has to pay an extra tax just for.
But there is a way to, it would be complicated, but there is a way to adjust things to make it more fair. Now, one of the things I think that the NHL should do is, like the NBA, there are certain, like the Larry Bird exemption to enable a team to keep a player sort of off the books or at a discounted rate. There's a veteran minimum or a veteran exception in the NBA.
I like it.
I'm for that because I think teams want to keep some of their players around, but sometimes they can't do it. Like you tell me that they
hard decisions of life. Like that's just tough.
But you tell me that the Rangers, if they have to pay Shesterkin next year, which they will, they wouldn't want to keep around Jacob Trouba if they had an exemption. I think they
still think they would move on. Like, it's just, here's the thing. Like Esmir said, the cap saved the Rangers from themselves. Absolutely. Saved the Flyers from themselves. Saved half the league from themselves.
Yeah, for sure. It is. It just that's what it's there for. I mean,
right.
The reality of it is that's why the owners.
Whatever money's there, the GMs are going to spend it.
And these owners, they're the ones who put the cap in place. Remember that they put it in place to protect themselves.
Yes.
And they knew that the GMs would go crazy.
Now, was it ridiculous at the beginning how low it was? Sure. But now it's getting to be a pretty big number again.
No, it's a very big number now. And it was low because they missed the whole year, and that was also played into it. So, that was an issue as well.
No more buyouts like the freebies. All that did was a crutch too for teams because, and to be honest, I think it was unfair that a player could get bought out from, let's say, your favorite team. Let's say it's Vinny LeCavier, go over play for the Flyers and do great because he's cheap now and he can get an extra $1 million. Like, I don't believe in that. I don't like that.
No, we saw it a lot, and we saw it. We're still seeing it. We're still seeing guys.
We're still seeing it to some degree, not as much.
Yeah, no, it's not as easy.
Compliance buyouts don't work. It's just another crutch.
Yeah, I mean,
I think just the PA and the league should just come up with a number, show why each side wants that number, and that's the number, and no gimmicks.
Yeah, I agree, and but there's so many gimmicks. It's so many. All about loopholes. It's so crazy. They couldn't do that. They couldn't do that now. At this point, they couldn't do it because one of those loopholes would be this RFA thing. With the IR contracts. And that there's salary cap in the postseason. That's a crazy rule. It doesn't make any sense. But they're going to let you have no salary cap in the postseason all of a sudden, like all year long. You have to have a salary cap, and now you can have whatever you want.
Russ, just to finish up, it sounds like this situation between the CHL and the NCAA is coming to a head where
it's going to happen. It's
going to change the landscape of
next year. Players will be able to take part in this.
I mean, there was talk apparently that like NCAA teams are contacting the representatives of some of these CHL players, trying to sort of lobby them to come to Michigan or BC or I'm saying it's gonna get to that point now.
I've heard some things, and I do believe there's some of that.
Yeah, Russ, if you could explain what's going on to people, that would be good because I don't think a lot of people understand.
Yeah, so what's going on is basically in the past, players who had played even just one game in the CHL could not play in college. So they basically were not allowed because they got a stipend. It's like the old NCAA rules. I know you want this toy, but it's too loud.
There we go.
No, sorry, you got to wait.
The funny thing is
that's a part of it.
The funny thing is that vice versa, it didn't work that way because a kid like Jeremy Bracco, who played NCAA hockey, played at, I think, BC, he went to the OHL. You could do that.
But he went after.
Right. No, he left Boston College and went to, I think it was Kitchener.
Because you're not getting paid at Boston College.
Right.
Right.
And he also was not doing well in class. So that was a thing. So, but there's also, and I'm getting the player's name now because I was forgetting. Hold on. But the big thing is, so also these kids deserve a chance. Like, let's say you do get cut from a CHL roster,
right?
You should have a chance to go to a college. There's 64 colleges, 64.
Like that kid that the Sabres drafted a couple of years ago when I was telling you about. Kid played for Germany at the World Juniors. He played in Chicoutimi in the Q last year, got released by them, got picked up in the CHL import draft by Prince Albert, got released by them. Now he's probably going back to Germany because he has nowhere to go. But if he had an option, maybe he could play for a U.S. college team.
So it's Tom Willander. Willander played in the SHL, and he's in college. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden that raised the flag, like, hey, why could he do that?
Right.
He played in the SHL. It's a professional league. So that kind of started it. And that was I think a precursor to it. And look, again, these kids should have a chance to have, if they want to, go to school, they should have a chance. Just because you got cut from the CHL doesn't mean you can't play. And like I said, with 64 teams that are available, or 61 out of 64, something like that, they're probably going to be like 3 players from every team that were former CHL players in a short amount of time. There'll be hundreds.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's competitiveness. And these leagues and the CHL should appreciate that. Like the CHL should want
they don't appreciate it.
They should want their league to get better, and they should want their league to be more competitive, which is what it would do.
Well, no, for the CHL, they feel like they're just losing too many players. They wanted to, I believe they wanted to have like a little bit of a stranglehold on the players.
Well, they definitely want that.
Yeah, and that's a part of it. But once the NILs broke,
right
now all of a sudden it's kind of like if you're a CHL player, you're like, if I'm going to a school like let's say it's Arizona State and they split the NIL money, like I could get some money,
right? Besides
getting a college education, and it's nice weather. I don't have to go, play in where's Musty Mike? What
Sudbury.
Sudbury. I don't have to go play Sudbury where there's 3 feet of snow on the ground in November.
Yeah. I can go look at the nickel mines.
I think Quite Musty will end up in college next year as an example with the issues he's having.
No, he'll end up in the American Hockey League next year.
Maybe
he'll be old enough.
If they feel he's ready. If they don't feel he's ready, then he'll go to college.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
That's basically where he's at. Yeah.
We're really at the point now where where younger players are getting better, and it really becomes a bigger issue about this AHL thing.
Russ, here's and we will end the show after this. Here's the complicating factor here. Now I don't know if Musty signed his ELC, but the rule is if you're a CHL player and you're drafted in 2024 before the 2026 draft, you have to be signed to your entry level contract. But the thing is, if you go to college, it's 4 years. It's up to 4 years. So the NHL is going to have to make probably in the new CBA.
In the new CBA, yeah.
The new CBA, they're going to have to make a decision in terms of like when do the rights expire?
Right. Yeah, I think that'll happen. But right now he's asking for a trade, right? So we'll see what happens with that. But if he's not ready for the AHL, he'll go to college for a year or two.
Yeah.
I just think it's good. I think it's better for development. And
that's the point, Russ. Like we should be doing what's best for these kids.
Yeah, because otherwise they end up in the ECHL, and it's not always fair.
Right. It's a great point. And I mean, now does college hockey have the same kind of thing that college football has, where players change schools all the time?
Oh yeah, they have the portal. Yeah.
That's kind of crazy in my opinion.
The portal's crazy, but like, okay, so here's a good example.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say you're Tom Warlander, and you feel like you're a top pairing defenseman, but you're at BU. And BU is like, we're playing you on the second pair. Right. Orlando goes, okay. At the end of the season, he goes, boop, boop, boop. He presses the magic portal button. And there's 5 teams that'll take him and make him a top pairing defenseman. Like, why shouldn't?
That's true.
It gives you options.
That's very true. It's a good point. Again, it's just what's good for the kids, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, there's some guys that can't get off the bench sometimes on these super teams. And they're probably thinking, it's not going to work out for me here. It gives them an option. What's bad about it is I have to write about it. When you write about a player, especially with college football, these guys are switching every year.
Yeah,
it's so crazy. Hard. Like sometimes I'm writing card backs, or sometimes I'm writing just articles for a collectible site. I got to mention, this guy was in Alabama.
Michigan State, now Florida State.
Now Florida. I had a guy who's already switched 3 times already.
Jeez.
It's hard to keep up with.
That's crazy. Really crazy. Well, that's all the time we have for today, guys. We have, again, go to the HockeyBuzz.com website. You can get in into the competition for the Crosby jersey, which is selling like hotcakes. People want that jersey bad. So that's good. And you'll just become a season ticket holder, where you'll get not only the entry to the jersey, but you'll get the rumor chart, and you'll get free no advertising on the website, which to me is worth it in itself. So, because I hate,
how Mike hates advertising. So,
oh yes, they pay our bills, but honestly, they are a problem, and I would just pay the $20 a year and get, and not have to deal with that. So anyway, if you can, go to the season ticket holder tab on HockeyBuzz.com. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you Friday.